Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Season 1, Episode 3, Fitzherbert P.I. Another slice of life episode. Um, Still no real main plot stuff, which is fine. Again, that's not really a problem. I'm going to share what I just said on camera, because I just want someone to hear it somewhere, because it amuses me that so far, the show that's been getting me the most viewing figures by far live was the Donkey Kong Country show. So Robin the 11th, who had 11 fingers. Okay, cool. And Cassandra specifically calls attention to, don't listen to this dud because he's pathetic and terrible and worthless. After all, what do you do now, Eugene? And that's a good valid point. What is he doing other than being the boyfriend? Like, is that his entire purpose? Is he just here to be, her entertainment and emotional support? There's a lot to be said about this topic, actually. No, really, there's actually a lot to be said about this topic. It's a huge, complex thing, and I don't want to begrudge Eugene the idea of wanting to do something career-wise. But it's an interesting automatic presumption that a lot of people have presented, mostly in the modern era, that if you're not being useful, you're a load. You have to be contributing or else you're worthless. Now, it's a topic. It's actually a very complex topic and a very dynamic topic. And I understand that there's a lot of layers here that I don't want to go too far down the rabbit hole on. It's just interesting because at no point in time does he even consider the idea of just being her boyfriend is an acceptable life career choice. Now, I'm not saying, again, that there's anything wrong with trying to do something else or wanting to do something else. It's just that doesn't even occur to him. Instead, he automatically presumes, oh yeah, I've got to be doing something. And I mention this because something I've noticed is really a trend, especially in the last, we'll say about 100 years here in the States in particular, is that if you aren't working, then you are worthless. And I mean working as in doing a job. And it is specifically a job. Doesn't matter if you help around the house, doesn't matter if you take care of the kids, doesn't matter if you're being the emotional support, doesn't matter if you're doing whatever. What matters is that you are producing money. And this is a whole topic that I'm going to try very hard not to go any further in depth into. Because you'll notice even in this episode, what Eugene is primarily focusing on is a job, not a career, not some kind of, exactly, a worthless mouth. This is not Eugene trying to find a vocation that he wants to pursue as his primary activity. He's trying to find a job. It's also naturally fantasy because he tries out for like 15 jobs and gets tried out for them pretty quickly. He fails at them, but still, like, can you actually imagine what it would be like to just walk into a place and say, hey, I heard you're hiring, and have them give you a shot on the spot? Can you even imagine that? Because I can't. I'm not that old. He was a good cobbler. I noticed that. He was actually a good cobbler. There's a weird recurring thing, though, about him not... Like, I get that it's a joke. Math. But he keeps trying to be in a hurry. In other words, he keeps thinking that there's a specific... like the goal is to hit the end point and nothing else. So he speeds up the taxi way too much. Excuse me, the cab way too much. He speeds up baking the thing. Later on, he... fails to cover the guard, the prison cell, naturally, the dungeon, excuse me, because he thinks, well, I just have to, the goal is to commit these kind of things correctly, blah, 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 blah. And that's it. Thank you, Evo. So, I also bothered to pause the episode for a second and look at all the jobs that were being offered. We've got babysitter, mason worker, janitor, hauler, shepherd, butcher, gardener, optometrist, jester, librarian, scribe, baker, decorative gardener, cobbler, cab driver, and then there was a sword? Not sure what the sword was. Typical montage, he sucks at everything, blah, 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 blah. We have a really, really good shot of Corona for a second. It's obviously stylized, but it's also very Greek, which is interesting, considering this is, last I checked, supposed to be like up in the, northern Germany, northern France area. I'm not sure exactly where, but either way, It's a very large, defensible port city, functionally set out on an island. It's got a large bridge, very defensible bridge, connecting to the mainland, and we also know now that there is a giant wall on the mainland, which is defending what is probably considered to be its territories, or at least it's yeah. And we did see the reference to Italy, and we've also seen twice in this show so far that there's a globe in the background, which is very obviously Earth. Okay, I'm with it. We also see that the town is pretty nice and absolutely and completely dominated by the castle. So Eugene then starts to irritate me. I guess I should say Eugene continues to irritate me. And I wanted to pause to talk about that for a moment, because there's this moment where he sits, he's like, oh, it's ridiculous. Like, they wanted me to actually do work. It's like, who died and made you boss? God. And the way he complains about it sounds very much like, I don't know, like an 8-year-old. He's not as bad in this episode, but the thing I've been realizing this whole show is that I don't like Eugene as a character. So far. He reminds me a lot of Data. Now, I use that comparison very deliberately. How many of you like Data over in TNG? I'll raise my hand on this, because I like Data. He's a great character when he gets there. And he didn't get there till season 2, and he didn't really start to nail it until season 3. Because Data, how many times have you rewatched season 1 of TNG? Because Brent Spiner didn't know how to act the role. And so they kept giving him weird lines and weird performances and weird everythings. Like, seriously, do yourself a favor sometime. Go back and just watch any given scene that includes Data back in season 1. There are quite a few. They all suck. And that's the overwhelming vibe I'm getting here, because Eugene, yeah, even in Measure of Man, Data is just kind of okay. Like I said, it really wasn't until season 3 they managed to lock down who and what Data was. Because, yeah, bad direction, bad makeup, while we're on the subject. He was wearing one of the muscle suits like everyone else was. Bad acting and bad lines. He was just kind of crap. And it was weird, because I like Data quite a bit. And Brent Spiner does a really good job of Data later. So you get it, right? Like, I'm not trying to bash Eugene. It's just, so far, Eugene is getting very close to get off my screen territory. He is a lot of things I don't like in a character. He is stupid. He is childish. He has no real sense of responsibility. He has an ego the size of Rhode Island. And that's just a wonderful compilation, chimera of blech to me. I have no doubt that he will eventually get to become a better character, but at this moment, I just kind of want him to get off the screen. You know what I mean? Yeah, early Rainbow Dash is another good example of that. Back when Rainbow Dash was an asshole, and a prankster, like a mean prankster. I remember that. But yes, Brent Spiner actually flat out said on camera several times in interviews that it took him a while to figure out Data, and I'm sure it took everyone a while. Remember, the original Data was very much a TOS character, and it wasn't until he became a TNG character that we actually start to see Data. But again, I'm getting off topic. That's true with a lot of characters, by the way. Picard didn't really come into his own until season 3. Riker didn't really come into his own until season 3. It's just a thing. Getting back to this show, so Eugene here, I just want to smack him. I honestly, I just want to smack him. Yeah, he is very much like, what was his name? Zephyr Breeze. Not as bad, but leaning in the same direction. And like I said, I just don't like that type of character. So then naturally it's time to showcase, oh god, season 1 Kira. That's another good example. It's another chance to showcase Eugene. So he's been pathetic and terrible and incompetent, but then we have to show him being competent. He goes after the thief and successfully catches him. Congrats. And then he decides to try out to be a guard. I was this close. I was actually in the middle of typing a note when I was like, oh, this is a great idea. Having Eugene being a thief catcher, which is a real post, by the way, is a great idea. A thief catcher, or thief catcher general, is probably how you've generally heard that post talked at. Their goal is pretty simple. Their job is to go and catch thieves. They have broad jurisdiction and broad authority, so they can go over different jurisdictions of different types of areas. So, like, you know, the guard has this, and the watch has this, and they have this, and the thief catcher just goes wherever. Their job is just to catch thieves. Yeah, it's a white hat. It's a medieval white hat. Eugene would be great at that. He knows the tricks, he knows the trade, he knows the types, he knows the styles. He's got the physicality, which he shows several times in this episode, and he knows how to hide himself. He would be a great thief catcher. But no, he decides to be a guard. Now, this is going to sound strange, but the job of a guard is to guard things. Now, I'm not diminishing the purpose of a guard. Quite the contrary. Being a guard is actually very thankless and unpleasant work. Yes, even now, in modern-day real life. It is a very boring, mind-numbing thing that good people, good employers will actually understand that they need to do things to make sure that that guard is staying alert and cognizant while doing their job. So, all of this is already a bad idea on every step of it, but then we add in the fact that the captain's an asshole. Seriously, the captain here goes above and beyond Rule Zero violator. This guy... Cassandra even calls it out in the episode. He is literally breaking the rules in his vendetta to bring down Eugene. So two characters I don't like in this episode. So we have the drill sergeant routine. Why is Shorty in this episode? The short old man. Yeah, it would be different if he was pushing Eugene. Or be different if he was trying... But yeah, no, everything he does is deliberately to try and cheat and kick Eugene off the thing, to disqualify him. And he's made it very clear that's all he cares about. And he really is just an asshole about it the entire time. Quick cut to the B plot. Or I guess A plot, technically. And Rapunzel is getting her portrait made, and she's trying to figure out what to put in their portrait because it's her, and blah, 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 blah. But then they showcase her mother's portrait. I really, really feel bad for the artist who drew an actually pretty interesting and well-done portrait, which is on screen for like 3 seconds. I paused it to take it in for a moment. I should have taken a screenshot of it. We see... Let's see here. The crown, the hawk, the cake, the sword, the spear, the harp, 2 dogs, a horse, a globe, flowers, vase, and multiple drapes. I actually kind of liked the portrait, to be honest with you, despite what they said. I also noticed she doesn't hang her portrait in public and keeps the sheet over it. Anyways. So, yeah, this is when Cassandra points out what I've already said, that the guard captain is literally breaking the rules just to flunk him out. He has even designed the upcoming obstacle course to be anti-Eugene, and the characters in it are straight up cheating to try and drum him out. But then he successfully becomes the guard. Which is only the halfway point of the episode? So then Eugene says, all right, I did it. I made it in. Now it's time to go catch criminals and to be a detective and to solve mysteries. And no, you signed up to be a guard, Eugene. Your job is to guard things. And once again, that is a very different skill set. So he says, hey, I want you to go ahead and watch the dungeon. You stand here, you make sure nothing happens. Every 5 minutes, you do a patrol run. Boom. Oh yeah, also the prison's mostly empty. Only 1 prisoner at the moment. Okay, you'll also notice this is the guard captain continuing to be an asshole who is, frankly, a terrible guard captain. There's this thing called allocation of resources, and I know that I don't like to think of people as resources, but you also have to think in terms of skill sets. Eugene has a particular set of skill sets, which he's quite good at. Standing in one place and staring into space is not one of those skill sets. This is the guard captain sabotaging his career, frankly. And that's the nicest, kindest possible interpretation here. The worst thing is he's trying to give him the worst possible assignments because screw him. Yeah, doesn't put another... By the way, that's another thing. You never post guards by themselves. Are you insane? That's basic. That's extremely basic stuff. You only do that on something that has absolutely no reason to be guarded. And that's a whole other thing I don't want to get down the rabbit hole on. So, yeah, it's just... Oh, sorry, you asked a question, Leonard. Which movie comes before the series? There's two. There's the pilot episode, which I don't know what it's called. Hang on. Give me a minute. So first there's the movie, Tangled. That came out in 2010. That comes before the series. And then I think it's Before Ever After. You're going to have to give me a second here. Yes, here we go. Before Ever After, which is the second movie. And then we actually start with season 1 proper. And after the end of season 3, then there is Ever After, which is a short film which concludes the series. There we go. That was Before Ever After. I called it episode 0 because that's what it was. It was a pilot episode. Yeah, exactly, Bionic Punk. It's just... Yeah, can Rapunzel do anything here? Like, she's the princess, and I know she's kind of new to all this, but she's still the princess. And Eugene is still currently dating the princess, and she is quite fond of him. I know we're not going to get too much into the kind of corruption that could lead into, but you can't tell me people are just completely blind to that. So anyways, the guard captain is negligent and stupid. This is actually gross negligence, by the way. This is also... he also then fires him after one screw-up. It's not part of the show, Linarith. If you want a rumination on the film, go watch that. I already did that like 6 years ago or something like that. At least I think... Actually, no, I didn't, did I? Did I? I don't remember. Hang on. Hang on. No, yeah, there it is. So it went live 3 years ago, so I recorded it 5 years ago. My bad. It's 1 year off. Thank you, Cookie Dude. As always. Yeah, I thought I had, because I'm pretty sure the first time I ever watched the film was for that particular showing. That's going towards Xenogears. Go for it, Lord Paramount. Words. So, God, I've lost track about that. What was I thinking about? So, Eugene sucks, and the guard captain sucks. The guard captain also fires him after one screw-up, which, it's worth noting, is a screw-up. Like, Eugene decides to just run do his patrols twice in a row really quickly. There's that speeding up things again. And then he just goes to visit Rapunzel, and it's like... And yeah, I should probably mention that this is 100% on the guard captain. Not only for not training him properly, but also not giving him a second person or even explaining his freaking rules. There's a motif in the episode about how rules and regulations exist for a reason, which I actually agree with. But they don't exist in a vacuum. If I tell you, I need you to do this at that, I have not actually explained the point and purpose of that. Now, in a crisis situation, in a combat situation, I hopefully have enough trust from you to be able to give that order so you just go along with it. This is not a crisis situation. You need to explain why things work, otherwise people don't understand what the purpose of your regulation is. For example, and this is actually a good example, the crossbow thing, which turns out to be a Chekhov's crossbow in this very episode. That safety reason exists for a reason, and he even explains it by virtue of example. He falls, the thing goes off, you keep the safety on so it doesn't actually shoot anybody. That's explaining. That's why that regulation exists. But imagine if you just said, keep your safety on, and never explained that. Granted, that's a little bit more obvious, but you get the overall point. It's still the sign of a bad leader and a bad teacher to not even bother to try and go into some of the most basic fundamentals of this is why we're doing such a thing. I know, right, Linarith? It's kind of weird to think about in hindsight. So then he fires him. And then we see the portrait that the thief guy did. Okay, cool. So Eugene doesn't explain what he's figured out, and the guard captain doesn't listen to what he's figured out. So once again, both characters are terrible. And once again, we cut back to the last ferry out of Corona, just like at the beginning. This is when the crossbow thing. I keep wanting to say Expo because that's what I said for years in video games. You would always shorten it to Expo. That's when the crossbow thing pays off. Okay, cool. And so then there's this bit where the captain says, no, you make a terrible guard. And I'm like, yes, he does make a terrible guard. That's great. Thank you for acknowledging that. And I was just waiting for the thief catcher thing to show up. Nope. Eugene is now going to teach them about the activities of thieves and how to catch thieves. Okay. I do like the end bit where Rapunzel shows off something. We've seen this whole show that she's a really good artist. So, of course, she just decides to do her own portrait and adds her mother into it. Nice touch. I did like that. The end, and then the episode just kind of abruptly ends. Oh, I noticed she didn't add her dad. I think part of the problem I'm having is it's very hard to care about Eugene when I don't care about Eugene yet. Like, I feel like at some point in time I will go ahead and actually care about Eugene. But the guard, even if that's eventually going to be true, the guard captain is terrible here. Like, that... This is the kind... You have to understand, and I'm sure you caught this, the guard captain is actually the villain of this episode. He is the antagonist. In fact, he's both, to get down into that. No, this isn't blue. If nothing else, the gameplay is dragging it up too hard to be blue. You know, that's a good point, Act. He's just an asshole. He's just an asshole. And Eugene is not someone I like, so that leaves me with nothing, functionally. There's some interesting stuff to talk about, some interesting stuff to discuss, and there's some good little moments. But ultimately, this feels like a green episode to me. It's probably a higher green. There's no probably. It is a higher green than some of the previous episodes we've just covered. But it still feels green to me. I feel bad about saying that, to be honest with you, but you aren't catching me here. What the Hare introduced someone who apparently was just a one-off. I thought we'd actually have more variant, but he's gone. Rapunzel's enemy had Monty, who was just an asshole top to bottom. And this episode has the guard captain being an asshole, and Eugene, who is better. He is. But he's still the type of character I just don't enjoy. We bare minimum have enough. Yeah, don't apologize. We bare minimum have enough for another episode. At this point, this is going to sound strange. But I want to keep going because I want to see when it gets good. I've simply heard too many good things about this show to presume it doesn't get good at some point or another. And again, I've already compared it to several other shows that have that exact same problem, right? That exact same stumbling block of the early things just kind of being like, I'm obviously not going to get through season 1 today. That's insanity. I took way too long this morning doing all my behind-the-scenes research. So, and we know that there's some talented and some skilled people involved in this show who actually had a free hand in crafting the show the way they wanted to, even if the show's actual results were sabotaged to hell and back. One of the things I did find in my behind-the-scenes, and I was waiting for a good time to talk about this, is there was very, very little executive meddling when it came to this show. There was a tiny little tidbit of it. So specifically, apparently Disney would try to be shocked. Disney was not trying to show any homosexuality within the show. So there was a lot of push down at a character. Try to guess who was into women. Yeah, I know, the gays. No. And so yeah, Cassandra is a lesbian. But they kept trying to hide that. They kept trying to kind of put that over into the corner. And apparently the actress who played her and the writers who portrayed her were constantly pushing up against that pressure. Now that sucks, and I don't want to sound that it isn't. But the point I'm trying to get across here is that that was the full extent of the executive meddling that they had. So this show had a pretty free hand in being what it wanted to be, with that exception. Most shows don't actually get that kind of benefit. We'll see what they do with it. I'm going to go ahead off the local recording.